Bill Keenan, welcome to Conversation with Cardinal Dolan.
Thank you, Father Dave.
Welcome.
Your
Billy,
Eminence.
good to have you. I've been looking forward to having you on the show for a long time.
Well,
I know
gotta
your
tell you,
mom. I know you. I love you.
when I woke up this morning, I felt like a minor league baseball player being called up to the major league. That's exactly how I felt.
Well, just look at me as Casey Stengel.
I'm
Okay, we're going to be all right.
thrilled
But this
to be
is
with
grand.
you.
I have benefited from hearing you speak with a lot of humility and even joy about your extraordinarily active life. My God, schooling, Fordham University, military service, high school teaching, and then the tragic accident, and then the temptation. Do I give up now? Would you mind? Because that's really, Billy, the reason. Not only do I enjoy your company, but I was so inspired by your story.
Well, you know, really the best point of departure is the day of the accident, September 14th of 2013. I was 46 years old and right in the middle of an absolutely blessed life. Happy family, 2 jobs that I absolutely loved, teaching history 180 days a year at North Rockland High School, and then performing in an Irish American party band another 80 dates a year. So I was one of those lucky, rare individuals who was able to turn passion into profession. And that dates all the way back to the night before I graduated from Fordham, and I was commissioned a second lieutenant. And that odyssey was a 4-year trip that took me to Fort Benning, Georgia, to jump out of airplanes, all the way across the country to the Pacific Northwest, to Fort Lewis, Washington, for 2 years, and then finally as a company commander in Honduras, in Central America, and then back home, grad school, and teaching at Albertus.
Yeah,
My
Albertus Magnus,
my
one of
alma
our
mater.
great Catholic high schools. Up in Nyack, right, Billy?
Actually, Bardonia.
Bardonia.
And so I had this incredible, lucky, fortunate, blessed life. And then on September 14th, at around noon, I drove down to Seagirt, New Jersey, grabbed the longboard off the roof rack, paddled out, and the surf was actually small that day, maybe 1 to 3 feet. And I surfed beautifully and happily for about an hour. And then a wave came. I paddled hard, popped up, and I'm riding, and out of nowhere, I got thrown off the board. I hit my head on a sandbar, and the paralysis was instantaneous. My last conscious memory was of trying to get my legs under me to get out of the water, and then everything faded to black. And at that moment, I experienced physical death. And then God showed up.
By the way, September 14th, the Feast of the Victory, the Triumph of the Holy Cross.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was only one man, one surfer in the water that day. His name was Errico Blitzel. And we talked about it about 2 months after the accident. And he said that he saw my body surface face down, and he knew right away that I was drowning. Now, God put him in the water that day. He was a lifeguard growing up as a kid. He grabbed me, dragged me out of the water, started CPR immediately. I had no pulse, no respiration. The EMTs arrived quickly. I was defibrillated twice on the 6-mile trip to the hospital. Defibrillated twice. So I was gone.
My, oh my.
And the CT scan, once I arrived at the hospital, revealed 5 bones in my cervical spine fractured and a spinal cord injury at the level of C4. So what it meant was that from the moment that my head hit the sand, I was going to be much as you see me now.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Billy, of course, reminds, Father Dave mentioned this, that you were a great friend of Steve McDonald, who was a great friend of the entire city. and you knew Steve and Patty Ann. He's been on the show before, Billy, and a story similar to yours. He took 3 bullets in the back in the line of duty. And yet, through some darkness, as you just spoke about, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually, he underwent a real resurrection, didn't he? In union with Jesus.
Absolutely.
And became, I use the word purposely, became a great apostle to this entire community. Reconciliation, peace, resignation to God's will, speaking to young people in inspirational ways. And thank you, Billy, because you're doing that as well, no? When did you kind of come to that decision that God has a purpose for me, it's not over?
Well, it's actually very consistent with the role that Stephen played in my life. When I was put in a medically induced coma in the immediate aftermath of the accident. And I woke up 2.5 weeks later in Gethsemane, trapped in this body, and I had sunk emotionally and spiritually to about as low as it can go. Every night I was sleepless at the rehab hospital, and in my silence, because I was trached, I would literally call out to God, why have you left me here? Like, what purpose can I possibly serve? And my grief was such a heavy burden, such a heavy cross. And I stayed in that state for probably the first 8 weeks. And then God showed up again. A man named Dennis Lynch came into my room in the middle of the day, and I wasn't able to speak because there's a little piece called a speaking valve when you're trached that allows you to speak during the day. And I didn't have mine in. Dennis came into the room and he said, Billy, I know you can't speak, but Stephen McDonald's on the phone and he wants to speak to you.
Now, you knew of Stephen then?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And he spoke to me for about 10 minutes. And I truly believe that it was God speaking to me through Stephen. And I'll never forget the things that he spoke to me about. He said, Billy, your friend Dennis told me that you're a wonderful history teacher and that you taught his daughter, Cara, at Albertus. And he said, I want you to know that there's a reason why you're still alive. He said, God has a plan for you, and you are going to come back and contribute significantly when your rehab is over, when you're strong enough. And at the end of the conversation, he told me, he said, Billy, don't ever, ever forget that in the end, there will be life.
Wow. That's Stephen. That is Stephen.
And you were right about him being an apostle, because that's what
Didn't
an apostle does.
That?
Yes,
Billy,
you did.
are you back to teaching now? I know you give tons of talks and visit classrooms and all. Do you still teach?
Well, Your Eminence, that conversation with Stephen was the trigger for a paradigm shift for me, because I was in this abyss of self-pity and depression. And that conversation sparked in me the change from perseverating on what I couldn't do and thinking about what I might be able to do. And luckily for me, I didn't suffer traumatic brain injury. My mind, my cognition was intact. And if I could just get off the breathing tube, I'd be able to return to teaching. So Stephen was pivotal in getting me to start coming back to life.
All that.
And I was able to teach starting in September of 2015.
My Lord, just so, look at that, just 2 years after, yeah.
2 years after injury.
Yeah.
And it really was, in a very small, individual, humble way, a resurrection. Because that going back to teach brought me back to life.
Wow. And now you still teaching history?
Well, in March of 2017, I fell very ill, and my doctors prevailed upon me. They actually ganged up on me in the hospital, and they said, Billy, you've pushed your body just about as far as it'll go. and we need you to retire. And so the one thing that brought me back to life was now taken from me. And it was a huge setback. But I took time to recover, and I reflected on the words of St. Teresa of Calcutta. She was being interviewed by a Western journalist. And the journalist said, Mother Teresa, what is it that you do on the streets of Calcutta every day? And she said, every day I go out looking for Jesus in all of his most distressing disguises. And I thought about that and reflected and prayed. And I said, you know what? I found communion with our Lord through my suffering. And even though I can't go out and teach 5 days a week, I can go out and speak and give witness at least 1 or 2 days a week. So in the beginning of the academic year of 2017, bolstered by the memory of Stephen's words, you have a role to play, there will be life.
Wow.
I started going out and speaking. And since he's passed, not that I'm worthy, because there will only ever be one Stephen.
Yeah.
But in my own way, I've tried to take up the mantle of his work and go out and share my story.
And you're doing it, Billy. Take it from me. I say that not only as one who is very fond of you personally, but just objectively to watch you in action and to hear people comment on the power of your words and your witness. You've been phenomenal, and we need you very much. Joe, let's sign him up for our men's conference in the fall. Sure. Wouldn't Billy be good? What about the music? Can you do it? Are we all right, Father Dave? You got to yell at me if I'm going on too long, because Billy and I could talk to everyone. Are you doing any of the music? You used to do the 10 whistle. My grandpa did that.
You see?
Yeah.
I played guitar, piano, electric bass, tin whistle, flute, and I sang in a 6-piece Irish-American party band. So, I mean, weddings in and of themselves are great occasions, but there's nothing like an Irish wedding.
You're telling me.
There's nothing like an Irish wedding.
Yeah. And you were part of a lot of them. They are good times. What's this tape? Father Dave, you were holding it up. Billy Keenan and Friends. Believe. Uh-huh.
Believe.
So you actually do some, you're still able to do some singing?
No, not anymore. It's, because of my paralysis, basically from the mid-chest down, it's pretty much gone.
Okay.
So to be able to sum it up.
To be able to kind of
the wind.
The wind, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're sure doing a pretty good job talking.
You can do radio talk and TV. You're just,
you're
singing a tin whistle.
Well, would you come back?
Oh, I would love to.
I see Billy around a lot, and I just know he's very active in the Archdiocese and in the church and in spreading the faith, and we need you. You got immense credibility, Billy, and you're doing it. Steve McDonald was right. We're proud of you.
Well, I just, from now until the end of my life, I just want to honor the sacrifices that so many people made on my behalf to help me come back to life.
Are you going to come to Connor's wedding in August?
Well, I don't know.
Connor, invite Billy Keenan.
I haven't
to
gotten
your
the invite yet.
I got it. I'm honored to have it. So,
come on. Say so.
He's your plus one.
It'll be an Irish wedding, Billy. You got to show up.
That's right. That's right.
Way to go.
Billy Keenan, thank you so much.
Father Dave, thank you so much for having me.